Hello, my beautiful family. Welcome home. Come, settle in. If no one has reminded you today, let my voice be the one to tell you. You are precious. You are needed. You are deeply, deeply loved. I don't speak to a crowd. I speak to hearts. Your heart. And tonight, I have a story for you about a silence that shook a room full of powerful people. A woman who learned that the most powerful revenge is not a loud shout, but a life built with such quiet joy and strength that it deafens all the noise of the past. My dear friends, I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. Picture the most opulent room you can imagine. Crystal chandeliers scattering light like 1,000 diamonds. The gentle murmur of elegant conversation. The soft clink of champagne flutes held by hands that have never known a day of real need. The air is sweet with the scent of rare white orchids. At the center of it all stands a man, a billionaire, radiating smug satisfaction. This is his day, his triumph. Now, imagine the heavy oak doors at the far end of that grand ballroom swinging open, not with a bang, but with a whisper. And there she stands, not as a ghost from his past, but as a vision from a future he was never wise enough to deserve. A gown of deep sapphire flows around her like liquid night. Her posture is not one of defiance, but of serene, unshakable grace. And holding firmly to each of her hands is a child, a young boy and a young girl, their faces a perfect blend of her gentle strength and his own unmistakable features. The music from the string quartet stumbles, then fades. 100 conversations die. Not all at once, but in a wave, as if a blanket of awe and shock is being pulled across the room. The air grows thick, charged with a truth so powerful it needs no words. Her billionaire ex had invited her to his wedding for humiliation, but when she walked in with his identical twins, everyone went silent. Have you ever stood in a room and realized the person you loved, the person you built your world around, was a complete stranger? That the memories you cherished were built on a foundation of beautiful lies? When the man you vowed your life to has been living a double life, how do you ever learn to trust your own heart again? Would you find a way to forgive someone who concealed their entire identity from you, even if they claimed it was to protect you, or worse, for love? If you've ever felt the ground vanish beneath your feet because of someone else's betrayal, let me know in the comments by typing heartbreak to healing. You are not alone in that feeling. Your story matters. Now, let's walk this path together, from the deepest despair to the most glorious dawn. Our story begins not in silence, but in the vibrant, chaotic, and beautiful world of an artist. Her name was Anya. She was a sculptor, her soul fluent in the language of clay and form, her hands capable of coaxing emotion from cold, hard stone. She found her truth not in balance sheets, but in the curve of a line, the texture of a surface. And then she met Lysander. He was a titan of industry, a man who built empires out of steel and ambition, who commanded boardrooms with a single glance. When their worlds collided, it was a conflagration. He was drawn to her authenticity, her passion, things his sterile world of profit and loss lacked. He called her his anchor to reality, his breath of fresh air. Their courtship was a whirlwind of starlit dinners on terraces overlooking the city, of spontaneous trips to the coast where they would walk for hours, of conversations that lasted until dawn, weaving a tapestry of shared dreams. He made her feel seen, cherished, as if she were the most exquisite, priceless masterpiece he had ever been privileged to behold. They built a life together in a glittering penthouse, a beautiful, gilded dream she believed was unshakable, protected by the fortress of his love. The day she saw those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, oh, my friends, it was the brightest, most radiant moment of her life. A secret joy so immense she felt she might float away with it. She planned a perfect evening, his favorite meal warming in the oven, candles casting a warm, golden glow. Their song, playing softly in the background. Her heart soared, practicing the words, "We're going to be a family," imagining the awe that would spread across his handsome face. But the man who walked through the door that night, he was a stranger wearing Lysander's skin. The warmth in his eyes, the warmth she swam in, had been replaced by an Arctic chill that froze the very air in the room. "We need to talk, Anya," he said, his voice flat, devoid of all the music she loved. Her soaring heart plummeted. "Lysander, what's wrong? What is it?" He didn't even look at her, his gaze sweeping over their home as if it were a hotel room he was checking out of. "This experiment has run its course. You're a wonderful diversion, my beautiful artist, charming. But a man in my position needs a partner made of sterner stuff, not someone whose greatest concern is the texture of clay." Each word was a shard of ice meticulously aimed. "Lysander, we're married," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I love you, and I have news." She clutched the pregnancy test behind her back, her secret now feeling like a fragile shield. "We're going to have a baby. We're going to be a family." For a fleeting, desperate second, she saw a flicker of something. Surprise. Maybe even a hint of the man she'd married, but it was snuffed out instantly, replaced by a cold, hard finality. "A complication," he stated, the word laced with disgust. "And not one I have any interest in. I've met someone, Anya. Her family owns half the tech industry. It's a merger, a real one. You need to be gone by the end of the week." The room tilted. The romantic dinner, the candles, the music, everything now seemed to mock her naivete. "You can't mean this," she begged, tears beginning to stream down her face. "This is our child, your son or daughter." He finally looked at her, and the contempt in his expression stole the very air from her lungs. "My child," he sneered, a vicious, cutting sound. "I seriously doubt that. This city is full of men who would fall for a pretty face. Go find one of them to play house with." The cruelty was so calculated, so precise. It felt like her soul was being systematically dismantled. He walked to their bedroom, not to pack his things, but to retrieve a single expensive leather briefcase. He was leaving their home, their life, their future, as if it were a business meeting he was late for. "Please," she sobbed, crumpling to the cold marble floor, the test slipping from her numb fingers. "I love you. We can fix this." He paused at the doorway, a dark silhouette of her ruined dreams. "Your love," he said, each syllable a hammer blow on the fragile remains of her heart, "is worth less than the clay you sculpt with. It's nothing. You are nothing to me." The door clicked shut. The sound was quieter than a heartbeat, but it echoed with the finality of a tomb ceiling. She was alone, surrounded by the beautiful, expensive lies of their life, holding the plastic proof of a new beginning that felt like the end of everything. In the bleak, gray world that followed Lysander, Anya moved into a small studio apartment where the sirens were her lullaby, and the thin walls held the echoes of other people's struggles. The money from the divorce settlement was meager. His team of lawyers were as efficient and cold as he was, leaving her with just enough to survive, but not enough to truly live. Her pregnancy, once a source of radiant joy, became a daily trial of survival. Morning sickness blended with a heart sickness that felt terminal. She worked 3 jobs, her body aching, her spirit worn thinner with each passing day. She served coffee until her feet swelled. She filed papers in a dusty office until her eyes blurred with fatigue. And she took in sewing alterations at night, the needle weaving through fabric under the dim light, much like she was trying to stitch the tattered pieces of her life back together. The loneliness was a physical weight, a constant companion in that tiny apartment. She would lie awake at night, her hands resting on her growing belly, feeling the gentle, miraculous kicks of the lives within her, and wonder how she could possibly be their everything when she felt like nothing. The night her water broke, she was utterly alone, on her hands and knees, scrubbing a hallway in the office building she cleaned. A searing lightning bolt cramp doubled her over. Fear, cold and sharp, lanced through her. It was too early. Panic clawed at her throat as she managed to crawl to a wall phone and call her older sister, Calliope, her voice a thin, frayed thread of terror. The hospital was a blur of sterile, harsh light and overwhelming, grinding pain. But through the fear, a fierce, primal love began to burn away the fog of her despair. It was a love that demanded strength. After hours of a struggle that felt both endless and instantaneous, A powerful, indignant cry echoed in the delivery room. Her son, Aurelius, entered the world with a voice that demanded to be heard, that announced his intention to fight for his place in the world. Moments later, his sister, Seraphina, followed more quietly, her dark-eyed and impossibly observant, as if absorbing the entirety of their new reality at once. They were so small, so perfectly, heartbreakingly beautiful. Holding them, one in each arm, a seismic shift occurred within her chest. The broken, scattered pieces of her soul seemed to realign, magnetized by these two tiny breathing anchors. Their profound vulnerability was not a burden. It was a command. "I'm sorry," she whispered to them, tears of awe and profound sorrow mingling on her cheeks. "I'm sorry I can't give you a castle or a fortune, but I promise you this." Her voice grew stronger, steadied by the weight of them in her arms, by the intensity of their innocent gazes. "I will never stop fighting for you. You will never know a day where you are not deeply, fiercely, unconditionally loved." Calliope, her rock throughout the storm, squeezed her shoulder. "Anya," she said gently, "Lysander, he should know. They are his children. He has a responsibility." "No," Anya said, her voice firm and final for the first time in months. She looked at Leo, who had his father's determined brow, but her own compassionate eyes, and at Seraphina, who had her grandmother's gentle smile. "He made his choice. He called us nothing. These children are not a burden. They are the greatest blessing of my life. They don't need a father who would see them as an inconvenience. They have me, and that is enough." But the reality of caring for two newborns alone was a tempest that tested her vow daily. Sleepless nights bled into exhausting days. There were moments of sheer, overwhelming defeat, sitting on the worn floor of that tiny apartment at 3 a.m., a baby crying in each arm, her own silent tears falling onto their soft heads. She was so tired, so utterly spent, that the darkness of doubt whispered that she wasn't strong enough, that she would fail them. One such night, as she rocked them both, her body aching, her mind numb, Aurelius suddenly stilled in her arms. He stopped his frantic crying and looked up at her. His eyes, so wise and deep beyond his few weeks on earth, seemed to see straight through the exhaustion and into the core of her will. In that profound, silent connection, a message passed between them, as clear as if he had spoken it aloud. "We are here, Mama. We are counting on you. Don't give up on us." A surge of energy, pure and potent, flowed through her. It was a strength she didn't know she possessed. She looked at Isabella, who was also watching her, her tiny hand curling around Anya's finger in a grip that felt like a promise. "You're right," she whispered to them, a new, unshakable strength solidifying in her bones. "You are both so right. I can't fall apart. You are the best things that ever happened to me." She stood up, her body humming with a renewed sense of purpose. She settled them both in the second-hand crib Calliope had found, her movements now sure and calm. "Starting tomorrow," she vowed to her sleeping children, her voice a low, steady flame in the dark. "We begin again. I don't know how yet, but I promise you both, your mama is going to become somebody, and you are going to grow up knowing that you can be anything you want to be, no matter where you come from. Our story isn't over. It's just beginning." As if they understood, both babies sighed in their sleep, settling into a deep, peaceful slumber. She stood over their crib for a long time, watching the steady rise and fall of their small chests, and felt it, a tiny, stubborn spark of hope, igniting in the ashes of her old life. It was no longer just about survival. It was about conquest. Lysander Blackwood, with his perfect new life, had no idea what he had thrown away. But someday, she was going to show him. She was going to show him that these children and I were worth more than he could ever imagine. Have you ever found a strength you never knew you had, looking into the eyes of someone who depends on you? If you believe in the transformative power of a mother's love, type unstoppable in the comments, because when love becomes your fuel, my friends, there is no limit to how high you can soar, and Anya was just beginning to spread her wings. The transformation was underway, and it would change everything. That spark of hope, my dear family, did not just flicker. It became a roaring, unstoppable blaze. The love for her children was the kindling, but her own two hands, her artist spirit, would build the fire. She returned to the one thing that had always been her soul's true language: creation. But this time, it wasn't confined to a block of clay or a canvas. It was in space itself. She discovered that her artist's eye, trained to see potential in formless material, could see the soul of a room. She could envision the perfect harmony of light, texture, and hue to tell a story, to evoke a feeling. What began as a desperate attempt to make ends meet, helping a friend arrange flowers and furniture for her sister's baby shower, blossomed into her salvation. She started small, with a name that held her truth: Anya's Artistry. Not just interior design, but the creation of atmospheres, of sanctuaries. She would transform a dull, lifeless living room into a serene haven, a cramped apartment into a bohemian dream filled with warmth and personality. Her first paid job was for a young couple just starting out, and the $200 she earned felt like $1 million validation. She poured every ounce of her love, her pain, and her hope into that space, making it a home they could build their own dreams in. Word of mouth became her most powerful ally. If you want a space that feels like a hug for your soul, people would say, you call Anya. She worked while Aurelius and Seraphina napped, her sketchbook filled with floor plans and fabric samples sitting right next to their crib. She painted walls with them strapped securely to her back, their curious gurgles and soft breaths, the sweetest music to her tired ears. The years passed not as a blur, but as a purposeful, beautiful whirlwind of color swatches, client meetings, and bedtime stories. Her tiny business, born from necessity, grew steadily into a respected, sought-after company. She moved them from that bleak studio to a bright, sun-drenched two-bedroom apartment with a window box where Seraphina could plant her first marigolds. Then into a small, charming house with a fenced-in yard where Aurelius could run and play soccer. Each step was a hard-won victory, a brick laid in the foundation of their new, secure, and happy life. Her children were not just her motivation, they were her greatest inspiration and her most honest critics. "Mama, that blue is like the sky right before the stars come out," Seraphina would say, her head tilted as she studied a fabric sample with an artist's eye. Aurelius, ever the pragmatic protector, would gently remind her to take a break, bringing her a glass of water and asking if she'd remembered to eat between her client calls. They were growing into remarkable little people. Aurelius, with his father's commanding presence, but a heart of pure gold, and Seraphina with a quiet wisdom and a blossoming creativity that mirrored Anya's own. One afternoon, she was consulting for a high-profile CEO in the very kind of luxurious, minimalist penthouse she had once been exiled from. The woman, known for her sharp business acumen, walked through the finished space, her usual stern expression softening, then crumbling entirely. Her eyes grew misty. "It's perfect," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It doesn't just look beautiful. It feels like love lives here. How did you do that?" Anya smiled, her heart swelling as she thought of the two children who would be waiting for her at home, of the man who now shared her life. "I build every space with the same intention," she said softly, "to make it a sanctuary for the heart, a place where the best parts of life can happen." It was in that moment, surrounded by the tangible proof of her own success, that she realized the depth of her transformation. The woman Lysander had discarded no longer existed. In her place stood Anya, creator of beauty, builder of sanctuaries, mother of two brilliant lights. The scars he had left were still there, but they were no longer wounds. They had become part of her strength, etched into her story like the grain in a piece of well-loved, beautiful wood. The past was a ghost, and its whispers were finally drowned out by the vibrant, joyful noise of her present. She was secure. She was valued. She was whole, and she had done it herself. But the universe, it seems, has a way of testing our hard-won peace. It was on a Tuesday, much like the one that had brought Lysander's final, crushing cruelty, that a different kind of envelope arrived. It was thick, cream-colored, and heavy with a foreboding sense of drama. The return address made her blood stand still in her veins. Mr. Lysander Blackwood and Ms. Genevieve Rutherford. Her hand trembled as she opened it. The elaborate, embossed script announced their wedding, and tucked inside, on a separate, thick card, was a note in Lysander's unmistakable, arrogant handwriting. "Anya, I thought you might appreciate an invitation. It will be the event of the season, a chance to see what real success looks like. Do come. L." The old wound throbbed for a single fleeting moment, a phantom pain from a limb that had long since been amputated. Then it was washed away by a tide of calm, powerful certainty. He hadn't changed. He was frozen in time, still seeing her as the broken, desperate girl he'd left behind. He wanted to parade his new, appropriate life in front of her, to force a comparison that would, in his mind, confirm his superiority and her failure. But he had no idea who she had become, no idea of the storm of grace and strength that was about to accept his challenge. What would you do in Anya's place? When your past comes knocking, dressed in arrogance, do you hide away and protect the peace you've built? Or do you open the door and stand in your truth, armed with the person you've become? Share your choice in the comments. Face the past or protect my peace. The next chapter of this story is about raw courage, and the moment a phoenix decides to return to the ashes, not as a victim, but as a queen. The invitation had been sent. The question was, how would she RSVP? The invitation lay on her kitchen table like a gauntlet thrown down. The crisp, expensive paper felt alien and hostile amidst the cheerful, loving clutter of her children's artwork, her fabric samples, and the half-finished cup of tea she'd been drinking. Julian's words, "a chance to see what real success looks like," echoed in the quiet, sunlit room. A pathetic attempt to poison her sanctuary. For a moment, the old ghosts stirred. The memory of being called nothing whispered at the edges of her mind. A cold draft from a door she thought she'd locked and bolted forever. She heard the front door open, the familiar sound of keys dropping into a ceramic bowl, and a moment later, Gabriel's presence filled the doorway. He was a sculptor, a man whose hands were calloused from carving stone, but whose touch was always gentle. He took one look at her face, then at the opulent envelope on the table, and understood immediately. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply crossed the room, pulled me into his arms, and held me. His embrace was my anchor, his steady heartbeat against my ear, a silent, physical reminder of the real, tangible love I had built, a love that had nothing to do with fortunes or social standing. "He wants to humiliate me," I whispered into his chest, my voice muffled by the soft wool of his sweater. Gabriel pulled back, his hands coming up to cup my face. His eyes, dark and deep as a forest at night, held no judgment, no panic, only an unwavering certainty. "Then he is a fool," he said, his voice low and firm. "He is inviting the ghost of a woman who no longer exists. He has no idea he is challenging a queen." Later that evening, after the children were asleep, the house quiet and still, we sat together on the sofa, the invitation lying between us like a third presence. The initial shock had melted away, replaced by a simmering, focused resolve. "What will you do, Mia Luce?" Gabriel asked, his fingers lacing with mine. "My light." That's what he called me. I looked at our joined hands, his strong and capable, from building beautiful, lasting things with wood and stone, mine stained with paint and calloused from hard work and determination, but no less capable. I thought of Leo's fierce protectiveness and Isabella's quiet wisdom. I thought of the business I had built from sheer will and a mother's love, a business that brought genuine beauty into the world. "If I don't go," I said slowly, the words forming as I spoke them, "I am letting him define my past and my present. I am admitting, by my absence, that his world of wealth and status is the true measure of success, that his opinion still holds power over me." Gabriel watched me, his gaze encouraging me to find my own truth, to voice the strength he already saw in me. "But if I go," I continued, a clear, powerful vision forming in my mind. "If I go, I am not going as his victim. I am not going to scream or cause a scene. I am going as Anya, the mother of his children, the creator of Anya's artistry, the woman you love. I go not to disrupt his wedding, but to present the truth, to stand in that room, calm and sure, as living proof that his greatest miscalculation was walking away from us, that what he discarded as worthless was, in fact, priceless." A slow, sure smile spread across my lips. The last vestiges of fear evaporated. In its place was a calm, powerful clarity that settled in my bones. "He expects a shadow," I said, my voice steady. "I will give him a son." Gabriel's smile matched my own, filled with pride and a flicker of fierce, protective fire. "Then we will go," he said, his voice a vow. "And we will go not as spectators, but as a testament. We will show him that the family he discarded is his greatest loss and our greatest victory. We will show them all." The decision was made. It felt less like a choice and more like an inevitability. I would RSVP with a simple, elegant yes. The battle he thought he was starting was already won. I had already built everything that truly mattered, a life of love, integrity, and joy. Now it was time to let him see it. It was time for the truth to have its day. What would you do if faced with your past in this way? When the person who hurt you most extends a hand, not in apology, but in a final act of cruelty. Would you have the courage to stand in your truth, to show the world and yourself just how brightly you shine? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Because sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is not with words, but with presence. The stage was set. The players were ready. And the grand entrance would be one they would never, ever forget. The Grand Atherton Hotel was a fortress of old money and new ambition, a place where reputations were made and broken. Crystal chandeliers cast a dazzling diamond glow over women in gowns that cost more than my first year's rent in that old studio, and the air was thick with the cloying scent of rare orchids and whispered deals. Gabriel's hand was firm on the small of my back, a steady, warm anchor in a sea of cool, judgmental glances. But it was our children who were our ultimate living armor. Aurelius, at 7 years old, stood straight and proud in his miniature tuxedo, his gaze already possessing a quiet, unshakable confidence that spoke of a secure and loved childhood. Serafina, in a dress the color of liquid champagne, held my hand. Her eyes wide but curious, not fearful, taking in the spectacle with an artist's fascination. Together, we were not a broken family. We were a portrait of wholeness, of love, and of unbreakable bonds. We paused at the top of the grand, sweeping staircase leading down to the cocktail terrace. For a breathtaking moment, the world seemed to hold its breath with us. Then we began our descent. The effect was instantaneous and profound. A ripple of attention, a wave of turning heads moved through the crowd like a force of nature. Conversations faltered, then died. The music from the string quartet seemed to soften, then stall, as if the instruments themselves were straining to see the cause of the disruption. We were not the shabby, pathetic ex-family Lysander had anticipated. We were elegance personified. We were grace under pressure. We were a silent, stunning, walking rebuke to his entire narrative. I felt hundreds of eyes upon us, but I kept my gaze fixed forward, a soft, knowing smile playing on my lips. I recognized faces from the society pages, clients of mine whose homes I had transformed, even a few who had been at gallery openings all those years ago. Their expressions shifted from casual curiosity to sharp recognition, and then to something akin to awe and respect. We moved through the crowd, and they approached us not with pity, but with genuine admiration. "Anya, my dear, your work on the Henderson estate was simply breathtaking," a well-known philanthropist said, kissing my cheek as if we were old friends. "Gabriel, I saw your latest exhibition at the Modern Art Museum," added her husband, shaking his hand with genuine respect. "The power in that marble piece. It moved me to tears." We were not outsiders crashing a party. We belonged here as much as anyone, our place earned through merit and talent, not just marriage or inheritance. And then I saw him. Lysander stood near the grand marble fountain, a glass of champagne in hand, surrounded by his fawning business associates. He was laughing, the picture of smug, self-satisfied triumph, believing this was the pinnacle of his life. Then, his eyes, scanning the room, met mine. The laughter died on his lips. His face went through a rapid, visible series of transformations. First confusion, as if trying to place me. Then disbelief that I would dare to show up. And finally, a dawning, horrified recognition as his gaze, dragged down by an invisible force, locked onto Aurelius. The boy was the mirror image of him, from the strong, determined set of his jaw to the startling, piercing blue of his eyes. The resemblance was so potent, so undeniable, it was like looking at a ghost of Lysander's own childhood. His new bride, Genevieve, a slender, elegant woman with the cold, polished beauty of a perfectly cut diamond, followed his gaze. Her practiced social smile tightened, then vanished completely, replaced by a mask of confusion and dawning alarm. It was time. With Gabriel and the children moving as one with me, we walked directly toward them. The crowd, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, parted silently, creating a path. The air crackled with the palpable electric anticipation. "Lysander," I said, my voice calm, clear, and carrying perfectly in the sudden hush that had fallen over our section of the terrace. "Thank you for the kind invitation. Your venue is quite lovely." I then turned my serene smile to his bride. "Genevieve, my congratulations to you both." Lysander was utterly speechless, his mouth slightly agape. He looked from me to Gabriel to the children, his mind clearly struggling to compute the scene, to reconcile the elegant, powerful woman before him with the broken one he had left behind. "I'd like you to meet my family," I continued, my tone warm but firm, leaving no room for interruption. "This is my partner, Gabrielle Valois, and these are our children, Aurelius and Seraphina." Aurelius, with a poise that made my heart swell with an indescribable pride, stepped forward and extended his small hand. "Pleased to meet you, sir," he said, his voice steady. Lysander stared at the small offered hand as if it were a venomous snake. He didn't move, frozen in a state of shock and horror. "Children?" Genevieve's voice was a sharp, disbelieving whisper that cut through the tension. "Julian, what is she talking about? What children?" The spell was broken. The surrounding guests, who had been holding their breath, now leaned in, their whispers forming an audible buzzing hum of scandal. It's not what it looks like," Lysander stammered, a fine sheen of sweat appearing on his brow. The powerful, controlled billionaire was gone, replaced by a cornered, desperate man watching his meticulously constructed facade crumble. "Isn't it?" Gabriel's voice, deep and resonant, cut through Julian's weak protest like a knife. You told Anya she was nothing. You walked away from her when she was carrying your children. The math, Lysander, is quite simple for anyone to calculate. And the resemblance. He paused, letting his gaze sweep meaningfully from Aurelius to Lysander, is utterly undeniable. The truth, stated so plainly, and with such authority in front of this judgmental audience, landed with the force of a detonation. Genevieve's face went from pale to a deathly ashen. She looked at Lysander with the expression of pure, undiluted horror, as if seeing him for the first time. You told me your past was clean. You told me there were no entanglements. Her voice rose, trembling with a mixture of fury and humiliation. You abandoned a pregnant woman? Your own children? Genevieve, please. Lysander reached for her arm, but she recoiled as if his touch were acid. Don't you dare touch me, she hissed, her voice rising to a pitch that drew the attention of the entire terrace. All of this perfect life you sold me, it was built on a lie. You're a fraud, a monster. She turned to the mesmerized crowd, her voice breaking with a devastating mix of fury and humiliation. The wedding is off, she announced, tears of rage now streaming down her cheeks, ruining her perfect makeup. I will not marry a man who could do something so despicable to his own family. With a dramatic final gesture, she ripped the enormous, glittering diamond ring from her finger and threw it at his feet. The clatter of it on the stone patio was the only sound in the profound, ringing silence. Then, a single, slow, deliberate clap began. It was from Senator Morrison, a man whose political endorsement Lysander had spent a fortune and years to secure. One by one, others joined in. Not a joyful applause, but a steady, rolling wave of condemnatory applause that was a public execution of his character. It was the sound of a social circle collectively ejecting one of its own. Lysander stood utterly alone in the center of the storm he had created, watching his meticulously constructed world, his wedding, his reputation, his future, dissolve into scandal and ridicule before his eyes. His gaze finally found mine, and in them I saw the full, devastating comprehension of what he had lost. Not a possession, not a trophy wife, but a legacy, a family, a love that was real. We didn't need to say another word. We had said everything that needed to be said simply by existing, by standing there as the living, breathing truth he had tried to erase. We turned, and as we walked away, the applause for Genevieve's courage echoing behind us, I felt Gabriel's hand squeeze mine, a silent message of shared victory. Aurelius looked up at me, his eyes full of a quiet understanding that belied his years, and Seraphina smiled, safe and proud, nestled against my side. The silence, as we had entered, had been one of shock. The silence, as we left, was one of absolute, unequivocal victory. The kind of victory that isn't shouted but is felt in the deepest parts of your soul. What a powerful, breathtaking moment of truth. Have you ever witnessed karma in action, where someone's past choices finally caught up with them in the most public way possible? Do you believe that our character, in the end, is our ultimate destiny? Share your own stories or thoughts about divine justice in the comments below. This incredible journey is almost complete. But the most important lesson, the moral that can change your life, is just ahead. My beautiful, beloved family, as we come to the end of this journey, I want you to understand something. The profound silence in that ballroom was not the sound of Anya's victory over Lysander. It was the sound of his own hollowness, his own moral poverty, echoing back at him in that vast, opulent room. Our true victory was never about him. It was built years earlier, on the cold floor of a studio apartment, when she chose to let her heartbreak fertilize her growth instead of her bitterness. It was built in the small, quiet moments of reading one more book on business, in the fierce determination to play with her children after an exhausting day, in the courage to believe she was worthy of a love like Gabriel's. Her triumph was the life she constructed, piece by beautiful piece, with her own two hands, and an unbreakable spirit. The greatest power you will ever possess, my dear friends, is not the power to get revenge. It is the power to choose. The choice to build a life so full of authentic love, profound purpose, and unwavering integrity that the opinions of those who hurt you simply cease to matter. Your worth is not defined by those who leave you or by those who try to break you. It is defined by the love you choose to create after the storm has passed. It is written in the joy you cultivate, the peace you protect, and the lives you touch with your own hard-won strength. Lysander tried to define Anya as nothing, and in doing so, he gave her the greatest gift, the burning need to discover that she was everything, everything he had been too blind to see, everything he had been too foolish to value, and everything he had been too weak to ever deserve. The broken woman was gone forever. In her place stood Anya, successful entrepreneur, devoted mother, cherished partner, and living proof that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating your enemies, but from building a life so magnificent and meaningful that their presence or their absence becomes utterly irrelevant to your happiness. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that you are the architect of your own joy and the author of your own comeback story, then do this for me. Like this video. Let that like be a promise to yourself to never let anyone else define your worth. Share it with someone who needs this message today, a friend, a family member, anyone who needs a reminder of their own inner strength. Subscribe to Mr. Cael Stories and ring the bell, because we have so many more journeys of the heart to share. And in the comments, tell me the one word that describes how this story made you feel. Hopeful? Empowered? Seen? Let's build a community of healing and strength together. Remember, you are precious. You are needed. You are capable of rising from any ashes. You are deeply, deeply loved. Until our next story, take care of that beautiful heart of yours. Good night, my family.